Hi, welcome back to Westbury 101. I'm Brian Westbury, Chief Economist at First Trust Portfolios. Remember, we want to be the antidote to conventional wisdom. We got some great news this week. Retail sales jumped by 1% in January after having a terrible second half of the year last year, or really beginning in September. And what I want to do today is kind of put all of this in context. Remember, we don't believe that the recession started until September of 2008. It's true that housing was very weak, and that was causing layoffs, and it was hurting overall economic growth. But the other 95% of the economy, the non-home construction GDP, was actually continuing to grow right up through September. But TARP, the failure of Lehman Brothers, President Bush's speech on TV where he scared everyone half to death, caused a drop in the velocity of money in the second half of 2008, really beginning in September, that took all economic data down. Now, also remember that the way you counteract a drop in the velocity of money is, first of all, work to end the panic if you can, but second of all, print more money. And the Federal Reserve has been certainly doing that. And even though our politicians today, in an attempt to pass the stimulus bill, have been kind of stirring up a little bit of panic, in fact, it looks like the American consumer is beginning to settle down. And so what appears to me to be happening now is that we are beginning a process of a V-shaped recovery. It's very early in the data stage. It's very early in this process. I can't prove this to you, but there's beginning to be more and more evidence that this is happening. One of the signs of that is the increase in retail sales in January. Now, immediately after the release of those numbers on one of the most popular business TV programs, there was an analyst that came on and said, oh, don't believe the retail sales number. On a not seasonally adjusted basis, sales were actually down huge, and this is all a figment of some seasonal adjustment factors. Well, I want to take a second here and talk about seasonal adjustment. Every piece of, we sell more houses in the spring, in the summer, when the weather gets better. Retail sales always go up around the Christmas holidays. In fact, that's a huge part of retailers' sales at the end of the year. So you can have 20-25% gains in sales at the end of the year that you give up in January. So on a seasonally adjusted basis, sales are always down in January. So just pointing to that doesn't prove anything. In fact, it proves the pessimism of the analyst more than it proves anything about the data. In fact, over the past 5 years, 2004 to 2008, the average decline in retail sales in January after the holidays was minus 21.5%. 21.5% decline. But we seasonally adjust that to take account for that, and in fact the average gain was 0.7% in January, even though the not seasonally, the actual data was down 21.5% on average. Now in 2009, we also saw a decline in January, the numbers that were just released, but it was only a 19.7% decline. So not as large as we've seen in previous years. And as a result, after seasonal adjustment, it was boosted to up 1%. So in fact, the numbers for January were very, very good and surprising. They surprised a lot of analysts. So let's look at this V-shaped recovery with which we think we could possibly have, and look at some of the data that's out there. Here's retail sales. Now this goes back to January of 2006, comes all the way to January of 2009, and it's the monthly change, so it's obviously very volatile. You can clearly see here the panic. We had minus 3% retail sales numbers in the September, October, November period, December period. But then all of a sudden here we are in January and we get a V-shaped pattern. Let's take a look at the ISM, Institute for Supply Management, non-manufacturing. This is the services sector index. You can clearly see the fall off when velocity fell in the second half, really the fourth quarter of 2008, and now we're beginning to see a V-shaped rebound. Here's the Baltic Dry Shipping Index, the cost of shipping containers across the ocean. It fell over 90%, but it's now up 60% from its bottom. Now, it's not quite a nice V, but the point is that we're seeing a recovery there. And then also one of the key signs of monetary policy getting into the system, the price of gold, it also fell dramatically late in '08, but is now rebounding from $700 to about $950. And by the way, I think going up even further. So the bottom line here is that the V-shaped recovery, the process of having money enter the system, is beginning to bite. It's beginning to take hold. It also looks like velocity is stabilized and may come up. There's plenty of cash on the sidelines, and when we can get the panic to subside and all of this new money coming into the system, we could have a very sharp recovery in the spring going into the summer of this year. So I continue to remain optimistic about the economy. If I look at the data closely, it's not a guarantee yet, but the bottom line is that the data is beginning to look like that V-shaped recovery is starting to appear. Thanks for coming to Westbury 101. Remember,